Hey there, Connor with Fishbowl here. The purpose of this video is to walk you through how to use the Customer CSV to create or edit customers in Fishbowl. It can be a little bit confusing. The first time you look at it, there's a lot of details, a lot of fields, there's some nuances with creating contacts and things like that. And so the purpose of this video is to walk through how to use it effectively. So feel free to leave a comment or email me or write a post on LinkedIn if you have a question that I can help you with, okay? So first things first is let's identify some fields in Fishbowl. So I'm going to click New here, and we're going to create a new customer. So we've got a name field. This is your customer name. So in QuickBooks, this might be like the actual name of the account, something like that. So let's say the customer name is Albus Dumbledore. Okay. Account number, great. You can use that if you have an account number associated in QuickBooks, otherwise not. Okay, and if you have a job, maybe this is like a child of a parent, you can include a customer job and tell Fishbowl what parent company it is if there is one associated. Okay. Next is the address information. So we have three fields here. We have address name, we have name, and we have street address. So when this exports to QuickBooks, it will use the customer name, the one that I just put, Albus Dumbledore. Then it will have the name field here. So this could be like an attention to. Attention, whoops, receiving. Did I spell that right? Yeah, I did. And the address might be this at Technology Way in Orem, Utah, 40662, whatever it is. I don't know. Okay, and then we have this address name field. This is specifically for internal reference only. No one sees this. It's just a way for you to quickly look at it and say, is this where I want to ship it to? So main address, if you just have one address for a customer, great, use that. If you have a lot of addresses for a customer, you probably want to get more specific. Maybe you want to call this Orem, Utah, for example. Okay, then we've got contact information at this company. So do we have a name of a contact there? Maybe it's Albus Dumbledore himself. Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe it's Dobby the elf. Okay, and the phone number for Dobby the elf might be 789. There we go. Sure, good enough. And then we got an email address for him too. Let's say it's Dobby at Hogwarts.edu. Don't sue me for using Harry Potter references. Okay, then we've got customer information. So this is specific, your terms and your shipping carrier service preferred by the customer, whatever it may be. You can pre-fill this in. The nice part is if you fill this in, it will carry it over to the sales order and use it as defaults for almost all of it. So that's really useful. Feel free to fill it in for whatever you want. We also have this alert note field. This alert note field is talking about like when you create a sales order, do you want a message to pop up on the screen that somebody has to click OK on before you can move on as a way to remind you of something? Make sure to ship on Tuesdays, or make sure to collect payment because this customer has been ripping us off, whatever. You can put any kind of alert notes you want. It just pops up on screen for you to see when you're creating a sales order for that customer. Same goes for vendors, by the way. This is a similar spreadsheet for vendors. We have an alert note field for them too. When you're creating a purchase order, it'll pop up once you've entered the vendor name. Okay. Then we've got customer groups. If you're using it, great, you can assign a customer group. We'll go and click finish. Let's take a little bit of a closer look at this now that I've got my customer created here. We've got an active checkbox here. This is saying, is it an active customer? Maybe I'm done selling to this person. I never will. I can deactivate them, and they go away off my list, and now they're gone over here. You can still see Fishbowl maintains a history of them. If I click Advanced Search and change this to show inactive or show all, you can see a list of the vendors, or customers, whether active or not. So we'll reactivate that. We got our Details tab. Again, all that same information plus a little bit more. There's a few more fields in here that wasn't in the little wizard window that popped up for creating that customer. The Address tab. Now this is where we can get a little bit more information for this customer. So maybe they also have one in Provo, Utah. So I'm going to click New Address here, and we have an address type. This is where you tell Fishbowl, is it a ship to, is it a bill to, is it a remit to, whatever it may be, right? Every customer and vendor for that matter must have a main office address. It's required. You have to have it, right? And so if you only have one address, then great, use main office, no problem. If you have multiple ship to addresses for this customer, then create a bunch of ship tos. That's great too, okay? So I'm going to create another ship to here, and we're going to call the address name. Again, that's just internal reference only. I'm going to call it Provo, Utah. And the name again, let's do attention, receiving again, whatever. Okay, and the address is that on Wayfinder Road in Provo. Utah, I have no idea what the zip code is, so we'll just use the same one again. Okay, and now I've got two addresses, one in Orem, one in Provo. You'll notice some things change here. So down here, I've got Dobby the Elf information, but Provo I don't. That's because Provo, they have a different contact over there. It's not Dobby, maybe it's somebody else. Let's say I click this little plus button over here to create a new contact. I'm going to say this is Fred, and main is referring to phone number, so his main phone number might be 909-568-1234, whatever. And I can set defaults for that address, saying, hey, this is the default phone number, and we'll set an email too. And Fishbowl will use that email to email out sales order confirmations, things like that, to your default ship to address, email address. So let's say Fred at, whoops. Okay, perfect. Save it. Over here, there's Dobby the Elf on Orem, and here's one in Provo. You can see how those two are different. Those address name fields literally just populates right here. That's it. And then when you create a sales order for them, you've got this little pencil here, and you can choose which address you're shipping to. That's the whole point of that. So use a name that makes sense to you. They do have to be unique. You can't use main office for the first one and main office for the second one. You have to have unique address names, okay? So there we go. We've created our first customer, and we've given it some additional addresses and contact information. Now, I always recommend the first time you're creating something in Fishbowl, probably don't use a CSV to do it for the first time if you're not familiar with it already. If you do, great, you should work for Fishbowl, sign up. But if you don't, create it first inside of Fishbowl in the UI, because these tools are more familiar to us, then export it out into a spreadsheet, and then see how Fishbowl formats it. So that's what we're going to do. File, export, customers, and this gives us a list of instructions for all the different things. We'll go over that in a second. And I'm going to click Browse, save it to my desktop, click Finish, and we'll crack it open. Oh, I already have it open. Okay, let's try that again. Alrighty, so here's our customer spreadsheet. So we can see some information here. Let's take a look at column A. Column A is telling Fishbowl the name of the customer. So we have only one customer, that is Albus Dumbledore here, and so there's only one on that spreadsheet. Where'd it go? There it is. So only one customer here. So let's create another one. Let's do Harry Potter. Okay, and then we're gonna create the address. So what's the address for Harry Potter? Maybe this is gonna be Pleasant Grove. Whoops. And we'll attention Harry, sure, whatever. The main address. What do we put in this column? Column D. Let's go to our wiki page. Okay, so if you go to help.fishbowlinventory.com, you can search for import and export, and you'll find this wiki page. So I'll do it for you right now. Import, export, and then our very first one is imports and exports. Click on that. This gives you a detailed breakdown of how the imports and exports work in Fishbowl. You gotta use it in a CSV, gives you all the different rules, all that good stuff. If you click right here, list of imports and exports, this will take you down to a list of all the possible imports that we have and the instructions for each one. So we're looking at customers here. And you can see here a list of every field. So if you compare name, address, contact, you can see name, address, contact. So it tells you exactly what's required in each field. Here you can see address type is a numeric value in that spreadsheet. And these are your options. 10 for ship to, 20 for build to, you get the idea. Remember, everyone needs at least one main office. So I'm going to put 50 for this one for Harry Potter. Okay, is it the default? True, it is. And the address for Harry Potter might be 890 West, North, whatever, in Pleasant Grove, I said. Utah, 84062, United States. Okay, so we're just filling in some information. Notice the city, state, and zip are in their own, and country are in their own columns. So just make sure that your data reflects that accurately. Don't just put it all in one, otherwise you'll have issues in Fishbowl later on. Also, I would recommend populating the country. Even if you only work with domestic shipments, still put the country in there. It just helps when you're doing shipping integrations or anything else. It just makes it easier to have that country information in there. So just spend 2 seconds longer to throw it in. And especially if you work with international companies, make sure you include countries. Okay. Then we got residential, true or false. I'll say false, whatever. Then we've got column L, this is the first one that's asking me now for contact information. This is specifically relating to this stuff down here, right? And so first it's going to create the name of the contact. So when I click new here, it asks for the name. And so that is going to pull from this field here. Okay, and then, so let's see, what's that in a number? Let's do 714-098-7654, whatever. And then we've got an email. Let's do harry@hogwarts.edu. And if you have a pager, I don't know anybody that uses a pager anymore, except for doctors maybe. Okay, credit limit, 0 is the standard. If you put 0, basically nothing happens in Fishbowl. And so if you want them to have a credit limit of nothing, then you want to put in like 1 cent or something. So that way it doesn't let you, or it'll pop up a message. Even if you're creating a sales order for, you know, something free, it'll still pop up a message, right? But if you leave it at 0, no message pops up. So just keep that in mind. Status. This is somewhat useful. It depends on how you run your company. Most people I work with do not use this field, but it can be great. If I go into our status field here, our options are right here. Normal, preferred, hold sales, hold shipment, hold all. So normal is pretty much always what you'll use, but if you want to give somebody preferential treatment, you can put preferred. And then the benefit there is you can sort picks and things by statuses, and you can have different processes internally that reflect based on a process. But it's really meant for humans to read and understand what they're supposed to do with this person versus the Fishbowl system understanding what to do with it differently. So use it if you want. I usually don't. I just ignore it. But it's nice if you do need it. So I'll just put normal. Okay, active, that's that checkbox we were talking about, true or false. Right here, true or false. True would be checked. Yes, it is active. So we'll put true. Okay, tax rate. If you have tax rates in Fishbowl, you're going to list the specific tax rate that applies to that customer if one applies. In my case, I'm just going to list none. Then salesman. This is referring to your Fishbowl username. And so if there's a specific salesman that should be applied for orders for Harry Potter, the customer, then I want to include the salesperson here. Maybe that's Connor or whatever. I don't have actually a username called Connor, so I'm going to leave it blank, but that's how it works. Default priority. Let's take another look at that spreadsheet. Where'd it go? Default priority. Again, this is a way to help filter picks. Really useful if you use it. Not everyone uses it, and it's totally fine if you don't. But let's say you have a super high-end customer. The Pope is ordering from you, and you need to make sure that you ship out stuff because he's going to order a whole bunch of more stuff to ship out to every church in the whole world or whatever. I don't know, whatever. You get the idea. So you can say this is like the highest priority customer, and you can sort your picks inside of Fishbowl to populate the highest priority at the top of the pick list. And I think you can filter reports off of it too. So it can be pretty useful if you use it. Most people I work with don't really utilize that feature, but it's kind of nice if you want it. Let's go back into that spreadsheet. Okay, I'm just going to leave it blank. Okay, the number, that's referring to the customer number in Fishbowl. So when you create customers, Fishbowl will identify an account number. It's just part of the database in the background. So leave it blank. You don't need to fill it in, but if you want to assign a specific number, go for it. There it is. Then you got your payment terms. This needs to match a payment term in Fishbowl. You can't just make it up. You can't say net 45 if you haven't created a net 45 payment term. So just make sure this matches something that exists in Fishbowl. Tax exempt, true or false. I'm also going to leave these blank just so you can see what it does. Hopefully we get an error code and you can see like how we deal with an error code. So tax exempt, true or false. If they are exempt, what's their tax exempt number if they have one? A URL, this is just sort of a free-form field right here that you can use for pretty much anything you want. I see sometimes people have this link to a external database somewhere that has more information about this customer or something, so it could be useful. Then we got carrier name. So this is if Harry Potter wants me to ship by UPS ground every time. That's his preferred. I'm going to put UPS, whoops, and we'll put ground. Okay, and now Fishbowl will default to UPS ground anytime I create a sales order for Harry Potter. Then we got our shipping terms, prepay and build, or maybe he's got his own account number, whatever. Again, this needs to match value inside of Fishbowl. You can't just make it up here. You have to create it first. QuickBooks Class Tracking. If you're not using QuickBooks Class Tracking, skip this section. If you are, pay attention. The QuickBooks Class Tracking is simply a way to say transactions that I run for this customer apply to this QuickBooks class. Fishbowl doesn't utilize QuickBooks classes that much, but you can use it to send information over to QuickBooks and then run reports inside of QuickBooks based on class. It's super useful if you need it. If you don't need it, just ignore this whole thing. Don't worry about it. Then we got to be emailed, to be printed, and issuable status. So this is basically saying when I create a sales order for this customer, do I email it? Do I need to print it? True or false? Most of the time, these are set true for everything. So you can just set true down the board and you're good to go. And then issuable status, I don't know what that is. Let's go take a look. Issuable status is always partially paid or paid in full. The issuable status to overwrite the module option, valid options are. Okay, so if you have the module option for issuable status set, if you have the issuable status set in the customer module options here, this basically says, do we need to collect payment before we're allowed to issue an order for this customer? Not this customer, I think it applies to everybody. Is it a partially paid, is it paid in full, or always, meaning you can always issue a sales order regardless if they've taken payment or not. So I don't think I've ever talked about that before. It's not very widely used. So feel free to use it if you want to. Okay, so that is sort of the walkthrough on all of the different fields in the customer CSV. Now, Harry has 2 addresses, so you can see right here, Albus Dumbledore, you could probably guess what we're going to do here. So I'm going to click Harry Potter, and I'm going to click Insert to create a brand new, exact same copy line of the line just above it. And now this one is going to be a different address. Maybe this is going to be Lehigh, Utah. And maybe it's attention, I don't know, Margaret. Margaret? I don't know how to spell Margaret. And let's say it's a ship to, but it's not the default, so I'll say false on this one. Okay, and the ship to address is that. Whoops. Okay, and it's Lehigh, and I don't know what the zip code is, so good enough. And maybe the phone number is the same, plus 1 digit. Email address might be marge@hogwarts.edu, whatever. Okay, everything else is the same, great. Maybe he's got a bill to. You can add all sorts of different ones, right? So that's kind of how this works. Let's go ahead and save it. And we're going to import it in. Every time before you import anything, make sure you grab a backup. So you have the potential of blowing up your entire database right now, so just make sure you grab a backup before you import anything, just in case anything goes wrong. I do this for a living, and I break databases somewhat frequently, and so having a backup, that's kind of an exaggeration, but having a backup is always good. Just have something to fall back on in case you mess it up. So to do that, you're going to go to Setup and go to Schedule. And then here, you most likely have a database backup task down here in your scheduled tasks. You just need to double click on it, and it will create a backup for you. Just make sure it finishes running. I'll go ahead and create a backup here real quick just so you can see it. I'm going to click New up here. Database backup, give it a name. Whoops. Give it a description. Save it somewhere. I'll just put it on my desktop for this example. Next, how often do I want it to run? Daily at midnight. Looks great. Finish. So now I've got this task sitting down here. I'm going to go ahead and click on this little play button over here. You can see it's running. And then down here, it'll say last run result and last run time, depending on how it goes. So you can see it was successful. And now I know, great, I can import it. And if everything goes, like hits the fan, I have something to fall back on. So let's go ahead and click File and Import. I'm going to type in customers. Okay, we're going to find that file. It's on my desktop, so we're good to go. Next, you can see there's 5 line items that I'm importing, and click Finish, and it was successful. So now, when I go to Customer, you can see there's Harry Potter, and you can see all the information. And go to the Address tab, you can see those 2 addresses were created. And that's basically how it works. Now let's do one more, and this time I'm going to get an error intentionally. I'm going to do another one. Let's do Sam Smith, the singer. We like Sam Smith. That's it. I'm just going to put Sam Smith, nothing else. Let's see what happens. File, Import, Customers. And we got an error. It says, hey, customer must have default main office address, just like I told you. So let's go back into here and say, oh, right, okay, so let's do it. Default address equals A6, and it's a 50. True is the default. And that's it. Let's stop right there and see if that works. Import, it was successful. So you can see there's pretty limited information that you need. You don't have to spend, like if you don't have addresses and information yet and you just want to build the customer list, you can. And so here, let's go into Sam Smith. There he is. You can see him. Fishbowl just populated some random data here, and so it can create that customer for you quickly. Now you can also use that spreadsheet to update existing customers. So I can go back into there, and I can say, oh, whoops, I meant to put in address information. So let's do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever, South Lane in Cottonwood Heights, Utah, and it's like 84009 or something like that, whatever. United States, let's just call that a day, save it, file, import customers, and now refresh, and now it's updated existing information, okay? Now if I go back into that spreadsheet, and let's say I take a copy of this and paste it in, I'm going to leave the address name the exact same. So default address, the exact same. Now I'm going to change this one to something else, the second one, whatever. Okay, because I have two of the same address names here, Fishbowl is going to use the last one. So it doesn't matter what you put here, it's just going to use the last one. And so once I save that and import it in, it was successful, refresh, you can see it just utilized the last one, lost the data for the first one. So you want to make sure that your address name is specific, otherwise, rest in peace, it's not going to work. Default office, let's call it, save. And now I've got two addresses. So that is the lowdown on how the customer CSV works. One note of caution before we go, that is changing information. There are some fields that you can change and there are some fields that you cannot. For example, anything that says name for the most part, you cannot change through a spreadsheet. So this one here, I can't change Sam Smith. Be like, oh, actually his name is spelled Sam Smithy or something. Watch, let's see what happens. Fishbowl looks at that field to determine, is this a new contact or an existing contact? And so since I changed the name, Fishbowl thinks, oh, this is a new contact, and so it created a new customer rather than adjusting the original one. Okay, same goes for those address names here. If I change this one, I meant, oops, I didn't mean to say office, I meant to say warehouse, and save it. Same idea, it's going to create a new address, whoops, called warehouse, and leave the original one alone. Just like that. Okay, so if it says name, you cannot change it using a spreadsheet, but pretty much anything else you can change on the spreadsheet. So give it a whack, grab a backup first, make sure you grab a backup, and let us know if you have any questions. Your implementation specialist, your account manager, or the customer support team can help with all of these things. All right, hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.